So growing up, I'd always hear things like every guitarist needs a Strat or every guitarist needs a Les Paul. Basically, pick your favorite classic guitar and then claim everyone needs one. I never really saw the logic in that. But believe it or not, I think there's a purely logical reason to say every guitarist needs a Virtuo. And that's because the Virtuo by Emerald is a guitar that anyone can find something great in. It's packed with features, the quality is top notch, and the customization is insane. And when you compare Emerald guitars to other guitars in its same class, we're talking the high-end boutique category, well, the Virtuo is actually a great deal. Now, the first thing you should know about Emerald guitars is that all of their instruments are made from carbon fiber, and you can use their Virtuo Builder to customize your own instrument. As you can see, I went with no inlays, black hardware, and red carbon fiber weave on the back and sides and the back of the neck. The only wood present is the optional wood veneer on the top. There's a ton of different veneer options you can choose from, and you can even position the veneer in the Virtuo Builder. But the wood veneer is here purely for aesthetics and not tone. And just in case you're an electric guitar guy or girl and you didn't know, there's no tone wood debate in acoustic guitars. There's just the tone wood fact. When it comes to acoustic instruments, the materials and construction have a huge impact on the tone. So the question is then, what does carbon fiber sound like?
There is no specific sound of a carbon fiber guitar. Sometimes people say, I don't like the sound of a carbon fiber guitar. Well, that's doesn't make a lot of sense. That'd be like saying I don't like the sound of a wooden guitar. Tone is a function of the shape of the guitar and the materials and how they're put together and how they're made. We're working with a material where we can use many different variables to create different tonalities. It's the layering of the carbon, the resins that we use, the thicknesses where those materials are placed within the guitar. There's many different things that you can do to change that tonality. A carbon guitar can sound anything from really dark and to super bright and everything in between.
Now, sticking with the topic of acoustic tone, your string choice is going to make a huge difference in this category as well. You could string the Virtuo with acoustic strings to get the best acoustic tone possible, but those acoustic strings will not sound the best when you go to use your magnetic pickups. I personally decided to go with my new favorite, the Dario half-wound electric guitar strings, but I think they sound good enough acoustically as well, at least for my purposes. The body is compact, so it's not super loud like a big body acoustic, but it's definitely plenty loud for practicing and recording with a microphone. In fact, with the sound hole on the side here, you'll be able to hear yourself very clearly, even more clear than some styles of acoustic guitars like archtops, for example. You could probably also go purely acoustic for a small, intimate performance, but I personally would choose to go with an amp or a PA in that situation. However, if you do need the biggest acoustic sound possible, Emerald has you covered there as well. So again, I can't hear a major tone detriment to using carbon fiber, but there is a ton of upside. As you can see on the front of the instrument, we have a forearm bevel here, and then we also have some carving on the front of the upper horn, just like you would find on some electric guitars. When we turn the instrument around, we have a really nice smooth belly cut. And I mean, the heel joint is completely smooth and seamless and beautiful instead of large and bulky like it is on other acoustic guitars. These contours are just easier to do on a composite instrument, and they make the Virtuo extremely comfortable. By far the most comfortable acoustic guitar I have ever played. I mean, look at the hill joint again. That is rare on even electric guitars. When compared to electric guitars, acoustic guitars are also usually more fragile and prone to changes in temperature and humidity. That has nothing to do with quality. That's usually just part of owning an acoustic instrument. Usually. But carbon fiber changes that as well. This guitar stays in tune amazingly well, and it should require a lot less maintenance in the future. Now, as we make our way to the headstock for our spec tour, I'm going to start by sharing my only extremely minor, and I mean extremely minor complaint, because, well, I'm me. I tried really hard to find some type of flaw with this instrument, but the only thing I could think about mentioning was the tuners. Now, these are Grover tuners. I love the button choice. They're very smooth and round, and they match the aesthetic of the guitar. They work perfectly well, and they're of course very comfortable. The ratio is great. The quality is perfect. But I just wish they were locking tuners. I understand acoustic guitars never have locking tuners, but I figure with a very unique, special hybrid kind of a guitar like this, it might be a fun opportunity to use locking tuners here as well. But apart from that, I think this guitar is basically perfect. I love the design of the headstock. It's understated while still remaining a bit more unique. And of course we have the color and even the burst on the edges matching the body. We also have a composite nut, which as you would expect was cut perfectly out of the factory. And you'll also see that there is no truss rod cover. So on the rare occasion that you need to adjust this instrument, you'll be able to get to your truss rod super fast. Now, as we make our way to the neck, this is where things get frankly insane. The first thing you'll probably notice about this neck is that it's pretty thin. Thinner than any acoustic guitar I've ever played. The back is a very nice gloss that almost feels like glass. It's extremely smooth and nice, and it doesn't ever get sticky. And as you can see, it also looks awesome. On the front, we have a composite fretboard and stainless steel frets that are finished perfectly. So this is also the first acoustic guitar that I've ever tried with stainless steel frets. And just like the carbon fiber design, that should mean this guitar lasts a really long time and needs very, very little maintenance. Again, I have electric strings on here, and I also dropped the action pretty low, and I straightened out the neck, so right now this feels a lot like an electric guitar neck. The guitar arrived to New Jersey from Ireland, and it was still set up flawlessly, and it was almost perfectly in tune. And as you would expect, ever since, the tuning stability has remained fantastic. Really, every time you pick up this guitar and start playing this neck, it just feels like a really special, luxurious experience. Those of you who watch the channel regularly may know that I've been saying for years that I generally prefer a chunky neck over thin necks. But the more guitars I try, the more I learn that every guitar needs to be experienced as its own unique thing. I've been primarily using the Virtuo for solo guitar arrangements, the type of stuff you usually associate with an acoustic guitar. Not only has the neck been comfortable, but I also noticed that, number one, I don't have to work as hard as I usually have to on a traditional acoustic guitar. And number two, I have a very easy time transitioning from my electric guitars and the Virtuo. So if you're like me and you're primarily an electric guitar player, you should get along great with this neck. So let's move on to the body, and before we get to the details, I want to share a brief story that will help to explain what I think is amazing about this design. So growing up, I went through a lot of different phases with the guitar, and one of those phases was going almost exclusively acoustic. I grew out my nails like a nylon string player. I even tried using fake nails. I mostly played a full-size acoustic guitar, and I learned to appreciate the ergonomics of an acoustic instrument. In fact, my right arm got so used to an acoustic guitar, that larger body, having it there to hold my arm up and put my hand in the right position. I got so used to that when I switched to playing electric guitars, I felt like that my arm and shoulder had to work extra hard to keep my right hand in place. I don't know. If you're primarily an acoustic guitar player, let me know in the comments below if that has ever happened to you. Anyway, long story short, it took me a long time to get used to playing electric guitars again with smaller bodies. But then once I got used to playing electric guitars again, when I switched back to acoustic guitars on occasion, I feel like the guitar is bulky and huge and it just feels a lot more difficult to navigate than what I remembered in the past. Like sure, if you play electric guitars and you pick up an acoustic every now and then to strum a few chords or to play a couple of songs, you probably won't notice or care. But if you're the type of guitar player who dreams of having a really nice high-end instrument one day and you save your money for years to finally buy it, well, you probably want that one guitar to feel comfortable no matter what you're used to playing. I mentioned this a little bit earlier, but the body of the Virtuo is the perfect mix between an acoustic and electric guitar. If you're an acoustic guitar player, you'll still get the substantial body, so you'll feel right at home. But you also get the extremely unique belly cut and forearm bevel, which should feel even more comfortable than your traditional acoustic guitars. And if you're primarily an electric guitarist, the body isn't so big that it feels bulky or difficult to navigate, And again, you get the same comfort cuts that you're used to with your more modern electric instrument. I also really love the carbon fiber bridge design. There are, of course, important electronics we need to discuss as part of this bridge as well. But in terms of its functionality, you can easily adjust string height and intonation just like you would on any guitar equipped with individual string saddles, like normal electric guitars. And this is a feature you basically never get on acoustic instruments, and it allowed me to set up the guitar like an electric guitar very quickly and very easily. And now we move on to the electronics, and just like every other aspect of this guitar, there's a ton to discuss here. So as you would expect, this guitar has a beautiful acoustic tone, even when amplified, because it has the Ghost piezo system. So we have this mini switch over here, and when it's turned all the way to the right, we are now only hearing the piezo bridge Ghost system. And we can control the volume of the system with the knob right here. Now, this volume knob is actually a push-pull switch. So in the down position, we get the normal kind of darker sounding Ghost system, and when we pull it up, we get a different tone with more of a mid boost. Now, if we come back to this mini switch, right now it's all the way in the right, which means it's on the piezo sound. If we go all the way to my left, we now get all of the magnetic sounds only. And in this case, we have two Fishman Fluence humbucker pickups. For the Fishman Fluence pickups, we have a normal three-way switch, neck, bolt, and bridge. And we have our master volume knob in the front and our master tone in the rear. So if you didn't know, the Fishman Fluence pickups are active. So we do have a battery box over here, which powers both the Fishman Fluence pickups and the piezo bridge. But the Fishman Fluence sound isn't really that traditional stereo kind of flat sound you might expect from active pickups. In fact, their standard setting, which we're in right now, it sounds a lot like a classic vintage humbucker. And if you want a more modern tone, you can pull up the volume knob, and then we get a second voice, which again is a bit more output and has a bit more of a modern EQ curve. And the tone knob also has a push-pull switch, but this actually splits the pickups, so we get a single coil tone. But there's still more. If we bring our mini switch in the back to the middle position, now we have both the piezo bridge and the Fishman Fluence pickups active. And if we have a normal 1/4-inch cable plugged in, we can use our volume knobs along with the tone knob for the Fishman Fluence pickups to craft a really nice tone. And of course, we still also have that push-pull on the volume knob for the piezo to go from a darker sound to a more mid-boost sound. Now, if we use a Y cable, we can send the magnetic pickups to 1 amp, like an electric guitar amp, for example, and we can send the piezo bridge to a PA or an acoustic guitar amp. So we can have a totally separate rig for each tone. And finally, we have yet another volume knob down here that controls our MIDI slash synth output. Now, I don't have a synth to show you today, but for example, you could have something from the Boss SY line. You could connect that right to this guitar via MIDI, and you can get all of your MIDI sounds as well. And you can still also run your 1/4 inch with the Y cable. So now you can connect to like 3 different amps at once and get 3 different tones all at once. That's actually a really great question. What's the point of having a guitar that's not optimized for any one thing? And yeah, let me explain that a little bit. So as you heard, I can play metal on it, but if you were going to be in, I don't know, a Silosis cover band, would you choose this guitar? Probably not. Palm muting is possible, but it's not the most comfortable thing to do in the world on this particular instrument. So no, you wouldn't use this in a metal band. If you are a Bob Dylan cover guy, would you choose this guitar? Maybe not. You'll probably just get a big old school acoustic, and that'll be the end of that. If you were a straight ahead jazz guitar player, that's all you played, would you buy this? Maybe, but probably not. But at the end of the day, out of all the people who play guitar in the world, how many of us just play one thing? How many of us are interested in just one style of music? At least every guitarist that I ever met is like, one day you want to play Ingrid Malmsteen, the next day you want to play Silosis, the next day you want to play jazz. We tend to be a very diverse bunch of people. And when you have a guitar like this, you have the ability to dip in all of those other styles without feeling like you need to run out and commit to buying a new guitar for that particular thing. And for me, I think it really shines as an in-between instrument. I like to play jazzy stuff, but I'm not like a traditional jazz guitar player who only plays the neck pickup on an archtop guitar. And if I decide one day I want to get a really bright jazz tone with a bridge pickup, I can't do that on a traditional jazz guitar. If I decide that instead of playing Bob Dylan traditional, I want to go Bob Dylan electric, can't do that with a traditional old school, just acoustic guitar. So it really inspires you to try things that are right outside of traditional genres. Things that are adjacent to jazz, adjacent to folk style music, adjacent to, I don't know, even metal. It really inspires you to do things a little bit differently and to explore tones you might not explore. So you probably forgot, but earlier in this video I said this. I believe there's a purely logical reason to say every guitarist needs a Virtuo. And now I think we're finally in a position to discuss why I believe that's true. But of course, you know me, I gotta share some stories first. So I mentioned that I went through a phase of playing exclusively acoustic guitars when I was in college, and ever since that time, I feel kind of weird not owning an acoustic guitar. Actually, since that time, I always feel the need to own at least 2 acoustic guitars. One normal flat top and one arch top for jazz, and because arch tops just look really, really cool. Anyway, since starting the YouTube channel, I've been playing mostly electric guitar and I've been teaching mostly electric guitar, and I haven't had the time to play my acoustic guitars as much as I would like to. And to be honest, this year in particular, just a few months ago, I felt kind of wrong owning them. I would open up the acoustic guitar cases after months of not having played them, and the neck would need adjustments, it would need extra fretboard conditioning. In one instance, the bridge of an acoustic actually lifted off the body, and listen, all guitars need love and care, but acoustic instruments in particular require a bit more love and care. So I just recently sold those guitars to people who will love and care for them properly and play them more than I was playing them. But of course, that meant that I had this weird little hole in myself because I didn't own an acoustic guitar. And that's where the Virtuo comes in. For one, since it's made of carbon fiber, it's going to require much less maintenance than an acoustic guitar. On top of that, if you're an electric guitarist, you'll probably find yourself picking up this instrument a lot because of how comfortable it is and how versatile it is. If you're an acoustic guitarist, you're going to have access to a lot more tones than you usually have access to. So from a purely logical perspective, when you look at the comfort, the reliability, the tonal options, if you had to recommend just one guitar for any guitar player, if you said to yourself, every guitar player needs to own something, I think it would have to be the Virtuo. Although, if you're a jazz guy and you believe an arch top with F-holes is the superior looking acoustic instrument, which I personally do, then the emerald kestrel is also really, really tempting.